Ladies and gentlemen,
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. The Wookiee is on his way. Don't panic, whānau. The Wookiee is on his way. He's just had to do a reboot of his computer, and he is coming shortly. And of course, I'm sure most of you are here to have a bit of a conversation with us because the legendary John Minto is waiting in the back room, about to come on. I heard a little noise. That means I expect to see a Wookiee any second.
Chaos. I'm sorry.
Wish and you are granted. That's not how that saying goes. I think how that saying goes. Something and you are here. Say the right word and Chewie appears in the mirror behind you. Is that right? You okay? Reboot? I'm saying last minute reboot?
Just everything chaos.
Well, listen, we have got an incredibly special guest coming up that I have seen on Twitter and also Blue Sky today, people basically saying, I will definitely be there tonight, because they want to hear from Mr. Minto. So we're not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to do one thing that we normally do on a Monday night, which is to thank the new patrons, and then we'll bring John out and we'll get into it. Want to say a huge thanks to our new patrons. I believe this actually might be our new patrons from a couple of weeks. Did I forget to do this last week? I apologise if I did. So let me say Lisa Thompson, Laundry NZ, Beck, Richard Denny, Moz Gol, Dan Maguire, Jackie and Lars all have become patrons in about the last week or so. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do. Lots of exciting news on the way. I was going to say the other day as well, Chewie, not as like a twist your arm up your back, but we had a meet up with the patrons a couple of weekends ago, and what I managed to tell those guys that with your fantastic support of what we do here, me and Chewie do here, you are actually also supporting other work that we're doing as well. So you supporting BHN has given us the ability to launch Craig Rennie's podcast. You supporting BHN has given us the opportunity to launch Gary Payinder's podcast, which we are hoping still is going to be before the budget, but as we know, certainly around the budget. So we as Mr. Luxon would say, good KPIs here. Good outcomes, Chewie. Good, and we're a safe investment for your Patreon. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do.
Absolutely.
Right. I think it's enough brown nosing right now. Let's get to the lead story of tonight, and welcome to the show, legendary activist, legendary protester. It is Mr. John Minto. John, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks, Pat and Chewie. It's really nice to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Amazing to have you.
Hey, yeah, it is amazing to have you, actually. It's amazing some of the people that I've watched for a long time doing what they do, sort of spearheading a part of the community that many of us watching are a part of. So just a huge thanks for all the mahi you've done over your years. It's inspiring and challenging, and we need voices like you out there more and more and more. So thank you for what you've done and what you are doing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Pat. I appreciate those comments. Yeah, I think, I think the last 18 months have been the toughest of probably my life, really, with what's been going on in Gaza. It's just unbelievable. And we've got a government that's been absolutely bloody silent, condemned every act of Palestinian resistance, but refuses to condemn the war crimes, the deliberate starvation of 2 million people, stuff that's just unimaginable. And I guess these are the people, our leaders now were the same people in the 1930s who never uttered a word about what Germany was doing to the Jewish people, to gypsies, to socialists, etc. Yeah.
Hey, John, before we go to have a look at the actual reason you were in the news in the last couple of days, I can remember asking, his name jumps out of my head, former male co-leader of James Shaw. I had an interview with James Shaw, and I was a bit cheeky. It wasn't on the run or anything. I said to him, what do you think about Taiwan? Do you think Taiwan should have independence and its freedom? And respectfully to James Shaw, he had kind of stuttered and stammered a little bit because as a politician, he had to pick his words quite carefully. We agree with what you're saying about national. Do you think it would be any different right now if it was a Labour-led government and their response to Gaza?
Really good question. It would not be as different as we might hope. I mean, you look at we've got a Labour government in Australia, the Labour government in Britain, and they're not much different from the Tories or the what do they call them in Australia? The Liberal National Coalition. It wouldn't be hugely different. But Labour, when they're not in government, they've said some good things. They've said that they would support the Green Party sanctions bill. They've said they would change their procurement policy to exclude the companies on that United Nations database that are involved in illegal Israeli settlements. They wouldn't be buying goods or services from them. They've said they would direct the super fund and other government sovereign funds to withdraw investments from those companies that are involved in illegal settlements. So they do those things, which are important, but they're not earth-shattering. But I think they would still stick very strongly to supporting Israel. They possibly would have by now. I know when Nanaia Mahuta was foreign minister, she was moving quite quickly towards recognising Palestine. And if that government had been elected and she'd been the foreign minister, I think, if they'd won their last election and she was still foreign minister, we would have done that by now. So, but yeah, probably not as dramatic a change as we might think it would be.
Most people think about you and your name, and they think about sort of a hardline activist, protester, hold the line, unwavering. There's that old saying about, perfect getting in the way of good. When it comes to like political leanings and stuff, how does someone like yourself vote? I'm not asking you for your vote, but when you think that if the side that my allegiances to are still not going to get there, like as I would like them to, how do you go through that? How do you marry up what you should do with your support in the political world?
Well, I think it was Sue Bradford who said that if you want to, what did she say? I can't remember how she said it, but basically you vote. I think you've got to vote for what you want. And under MMP, we're closer to that than many other countries.
Yeah, true.
Too many people say, under the old first past the post, they used to say, well, a vote for what is values in the old days. A vote for values is a vote for national. Well, no, a vote for values is a vote for values. And if that means Labor has to smarten its act up to get your vote, then they should be, they should smarten their vote up, their act up to get it. So I think too often we're always voting for the lesser of two evils rather than voting for what we really want. And I think people should vote for what they really want.
And the problem with that, isn't it, is that if we always vote for the lesser of two evils, we're never going to change the system to how it's the eternal conversation, isn't it? I mean, do you vote for back in the day? Do you vote for Hillary Clinton? Was a horrific warmonger and but that's better than Trump. Yeah. But if we don't vote for Hillary Clinton, then Trump gets in, or should we let Trump get in because we actually need the system to burn down so we can rebuild it? It's an eternal conversation.
Yeah, well, that's not a good choice. I mean, to be honest with you, Trump's been far better in terms of wars than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton as Secretary of the State was just appalling. Trump, his natural instinct is not to go to war, and that's you've got to say that's a hugely positive thing compared to a traditional American Democrat. So there's lots to hate about Trump, but you've got to give credit where it's due. I mean, he didn't want to. There were lots of times when he was urged to go to war or to bomb this country or that country, which he didn't. And I think that's,
Although he
Credit
seems
where
to be trying to make up for it in the second term about annexing Greenland and Canada and Panama and anywhere else. So, so we'll see.
I mean, it's
We'll
all, yeah. I mean, let's not go there at the moment. I mean, America is an imperial power which is in decline. And whenever imperial powers go into decline, you know, if you look at the Roman Empire, look at any empires, when they go into decline, they elect leaders who do stupid things, who everybody starts to look for something which is going to save the empire. And so they vote for these, for extreme policies, extreme leaders, and it just gets wackier and wackier and stupider and stupider. And America's in that phase now, I think. It's a waning imperial power. And I think things are going to get a lot hairier with them, because they're still they're still a massively armed country. They can still do a hell of a lot of damage. Yeah, but they are a waning power.
The problem with me, John, is I talk too much, and then my friend Chewy there sitting beside me, he looks and listens and enjoys, and then I say, Chewy, come on in. So I'll just say it now. Chewy should definitely come in and join a part of this conversation. And I'll shut up.
I was just thinking about your comment there about declining empires, and what we saw last century is some of France's most egregious actions in the 20th century was trying to hold on to their possessions. And certainly the British Empire, you had Malaya and you had Suez and you had basically in the news right now, drawing funny lines on maps and hoping it will all work out. And India and Pakistan absolutely hate each other's guts because of how England kind of went, this will be fine. Anyway, we're out.
Yeah.
Not our fault now.
Oh, it's all over. That's all over the place. The legacy of sort of colonization and those imperial powers has just been frickin' dreadful. The world's been suffering from that for a long time, and then you end up in these countries with so many of them have just got despotic rulers, but they're there because they're prepared to toe the line with the US or the UK, and that means the people suffer all the way through.
So as far as I guess what we've been talking about Gaza, Palestine, Israel, and that sort of thing, if we gave you a magic wand, what does that part of the world look like?
Very simple.
What's your solution?
The solution, the only possible solution now, is the solution that was put forward in the 1980s by the Palestine Liberation Organization. One state where everybody has equal rights. So you have a democratic constitution, you have which gives protection for religious rights, for ethnic minorities, all the rest of it. But like the way South Africa's turned out now, so we're all in it together. You cannot make one group of people safe by driving another group of people off their land. And if we end up with this two-state solution, which is the fallback position for the West, because the West wants to maintain Israel, or at least the US in particular wants to maintain Israel as a state in the Middle East that will do what the US wants. So it will keep the Arab countries in line. And I have to say the biggest job they have, Israel has, is to prevent democracy breaking out in the Arab world, because that is America's greatest fear. They do not want democracy. Democracy means those countries take control of their resources and they take control of their own destinies. And that's what the US doesn't want to see, because that means that the US wants to control the flow of oil. The US doesn't need oil from the Middle East, but it wants to control the flow of oil to its friends and away from its enemies.
The thing that's interesting about the South African comparison is, without the oppression of people like Nelson Mandela, who then raised up to lead the country and then go through truth and reconciliation, you probably wouldn't have that whole thing today. So if we're going to use that as a bit of an example, do we have a Nelson Mandela yet? Is that person still to come? How does that person raise up and become the leader to do the equivalent of the truth and reconciliation thing?
Yeah, I mean, Israel has systematically assassinated every credible Palestinian leader they can find. It's just part of their modus operandi. So over the years, there have been dozens and dozens of Mandela-like figures who've simply been assassinated by Israel. because they want the Palestinian people to be leaderless. They want them to be disorganized. They want them to be split 1,000 ways. And with that situation, they can continue their, pushing people off the land, colonizing the land, stealing the land from the local people. So, but having said that, I have there isn't a Mandela figure there at the moment, but I don't think we need a Mandela figure. We need democracy. And in a democratic system, those leaders will emerge rapidly from the Palestinian community. If we have, for example, we haven't had elections in Palestine since 2006, partly because the Palestinian Authority don't want the elections because they'll be voted out. But partly because Israel and the US don't want elections, because if they do have elections, they'll have Hamas, they'll have other groups that are genuine, have much greater claim to represent the Palestinian people in positions of power. So they do not want Palestinians to have democracy and elect their own leaders. So I think if we've just got to give Palestinians the opportunity to develop their own democratic structures, and we can do that if you take them out of this pressure cooker, you end the occupation of Palestine, get those Israeli troops out of Palestinian areas, and allow Palestinians to develop their own sort of democratic culture, which they will do very rapidly.
So just so I'm clear as well, for people who have not necessarily heard of the one-state solution, again, a lot of people say two-state solution. That would be Israel, Gaza, West Bank, one unified country. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Jerusalem, what we would call historic Palestine, which is sort of the Palestine from pre-1948. That Palestine would be one single entity where everybody has equal rights, and there'd be probably 60-40 Palestinians compared to Palestinians compared to Jews. There'd be about 60-40, and we would have to allow Palestinians the right to return to their land and their homes, which they've been excluded from for 77 years. So in that situation, yes, there would be Israel would no longer be a Jewish state. You can argue Israel isn't a Jewish state now. In fact, it's not, because 20% of Israeli citizens are Palestinians. So it's not a Jewish state. It calls itself a Jewish and democratic state. Well, it's neither of those. It's actually a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious state where the leadership, the far right leadership, are desperately trying to hold on to that Jewish majority, which they have no right to hold on to. It's simply, you hold on to a majority just by stopping anyone else from having a vote. That's what white South Africans did. They said, we're a democratic country. Blacks can have their vote in these other areas, these Bantustans, but not in white South Africa. But of course, it was all a charade, just to keep whites in power and to keep the black workers ready to work for the white-owned industries. Yeah. And Israel would be happy to keep that similar situation for Palestinians.
Again, just for clarity for me, everyone else watching, when you say it would be 60-40 and 40 would be Jewish, are you using that as an equal word to Israeli? Because not everyone in Israel is actually Jewish.
No, not everyone in Israel. Yeah, I think crumbs. I have to update my figures here, but I think I might be getting it wrong here. 9 million, I think, people in Israel who have the right to vote in Israel. 9 million, and 2 million of them are Palestinians. So they are Palestinian citizens of Israel, but they are second-class citizens. So there's a whole range of laws that Israel has, 65 laws that discriminate against people who are not Jewish. So that's why Israel's called an apartheid state, right? Because it has these laws that discriminate against people on the basis of race. So those Palestinians, and Palestinians are sort of, in several different groups. Yeah, the group that has the most rights are Palestinian citizens of Israel. Then you have Palestinians living in Gaza and the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, and they don't have any they live under Israeli military law. They don't live under Israeli civilian law, which Palestinians who are citizens of Israel do. And under military rule, you're under the arbitrary, rule of a military, which is, this is why we get these casualized killing of Palestinians, which has gone on for 77 years, and now the mass slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza, something which is utterly horrendous, all under the cover of Israeli propaganda, which is readily promoted by Western media.
Maybe we'll jump across now to the, how long have we been going? 20 minutes. So the reason we asked you to come, John, it's been an insightful chat. Thank you for that. But this came out yesterday in the press that the police watchdog group have said that you were arrested and pepper sprayed unlawfully. I believe, is this you taking this video, the video that's on the story? Is this your video or is this someone else's video?
No, it's not mine. It'd be something else.
Because I think the story said at one stage you were sitting on the sidewalk videoing. I just wondered if this was yours or not.
Yeah, no, I was videoing the people in the middle of the road, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a protest. That was a very simple protest. It sort of, there were people. I mean, I stayed on the footpath. I wasn't part of the organising, but I was certainly there supporting it. And people did go onto the road, and they didn't block the road. What they were doing was sort of making the cars drive around a block in Littleton rather than drive straight through, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So, and it was intended to be a relatively short bit of disruption, but the reaction of the police was really surprising. And to be frank, I thought it was really stupid. And they were, I'd call it cowboy policing. So they had a lot of young police there. And I think a lot of them had never been in a demonstration before, never policed a demonstration before. And I have no idea what their senior, the senior sergeant or inspector who was in charge told them beforehand, but they came around and they were acting like just in such a really cavalier way to people who were being, people were on the road. People weren't doing exactly what they were told to do, but it wasn't they called it a mass disorder event. Well, when the police got stuck in, yes, it was a mass disorder event. But the police turned it into that. And then they were pepper spraying people. It was absolutely freaking outrageous. So I made a complaint immediately. And then on the day, and then 15 months later, the decision came out yesterday to say that the Independent Police Conduct Authority found that that it was unlawful for them to pepper spray me, and it was unlawful for them to arrest me. So it's not a very pleasant situation to be in.
So you were arrested on the day. Did you go into the paddy wagon off to the police station, or
Yeah.
What happens now? Like, now that they've said that you are unlawfully arrested, like, is it just basically like, I should be right now, or is there some kind of recourse? What happens with you? Because obviously as a part of that, you were harmed, because even just the pepper spray, but we can see these photos that you are harmed during the situation. What happens after they've decided, whoopsie, our bad?
Yeah, well, what happens is that I'm meeting with a lawyer next week, and it seems the only thing you can do. I mean, we can. I'm not sure all the options, but I know one other person who was pepper sprayed. I think the first protester in New Zealand ever pepper sprayed that happened in Auckland, and you can go through a process and apply for compensation, and I'm not exactly sure how it works, to be frank. So if I do that, I will do that. If we can get some money, that money will go into the Palestine Solidarity Movement. It's unfortunate that is the only way that appears to be the only way you can get any kind of any redress, but it's not really redress. It'd be nice for the police to come out and say, hey, look, we mucked up. We got this wrong. We're really sorry, and we're going to give better training to our people, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be nice to think that might happen, but I can't imagine it happening.
You just get a phone call from your lawyer? Is that how you find out?
Look, I'm Yeah, I'm actually not even sure about that, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if there's a meeting or what. I just don't know what the process is.
Chewy, sir, your dulcet tones.
I saw an interesting question. I don't know, idea. Maybe the police reaction here was so out the gates because they're not used to dealing with protesters, because we don't protest enough. And as citizens, we owe it to the New Zealand police to improve their frequency of training with protesters.
Well,
would that be an idea?
No, well, it is an idea. I've actually had senior police here in Christchurch say that to me, say that they have they've got a whole lot of police there now who have very little experience in protesting demonstration in sort of policing demonstrations, and I mean, I do see that, and part of it is the whole sort of arming of the police. So there's two aspects here. There's young cops who've had no experience of dealing with protesters. They expect everyone to do what they say immediately. And then they escalate things really rapidly when people don't do exactly what they want, or people argue the toss with them. So that's an issue. And the second issue is that the police have, from the time when I was growing up, all the police had was an old wooden baton, and what police had to do, they had to genuinely work to de-escalate situations. So they would talk their way through situations. And I've seen some of that, some really good policing, where, I was in Auckland, and a guy living across the road from us was he was having serious mental health issues one night, and he thought his flatmate had stolen his speakers, so he went out and he just ranting and raving around the house and in the middle of the road. He smashed all the windows in his flat and was completely out of it. And the cops arrived. 2 cops arrived, and honestly, they were bloody good. They kept well back. They didn't go up and taser him or pepper spray him. They just talked them down. Said, "Come on, mate. Okay, well, let's talk about it." The police these days don't do that. They don't do that. They come in and they're armed. So, pepper spray, then a taser, and go to your car and get the Glock pistol out if you need to. It's I think it's really sad that our policing sort of come to that. Yeah,
sounds like
so true. I think you're right. There is, and the police are aware of that. They've said that to me, that they that the lack of experience in dealing with protest situations is really showing up.
John, it sounds like there's a business opportunity there. You could be consulting the police. I mean, seriously.
It's not me. It won't be happening with me. Okay. No, it won't be happening with me.
There has always been accusations of rent-a-crowd. So,
rent-a-crowd. Well, I'll tell you what, the pay's no good. The pay is $0 an hour. So if you're renting, it's
It's actually, I said that tongue in cheek, but it's actually a question that had come in as well from Worming. Would John go to the police college and help train up police around demonstrations?
No,
not your bag.
No, it's not my thing. It's I'm focused on the police need to worry about themselves and what they do and get their own act together. But the human, our job is to. I'm not a great fan of. Let me put it another way. I think in a democracy, we should have every citizen should have a very healthy skepticism for the police and for organisations that operate largely in secret, like our spies, the SIS and the GCSB, who are largely unaccountable. And we only see their enormous F-ups when they become public. And then suddenly, yes, there was a terrible problem, but it was an isolated problem with isolated people and blah, blah. It's actually not. So these problems are systemic within organisations that are used to making decisions behind closed doors. So we should always have a healthy skepticism of the police. I'm not saying we should be anti-police, but I'm saying we shouldn't defer to their word as the word from on high.
I was going to say as well. I was going to ask you one other question. Chewy, have you got anything else for John that you want to ask before we wrap up?
No, I'm all good. Thanks, Pat.
I just thought, John,
Cheerio,
because
I
we
like
start.
your Palestinian flag there. It's really good in the background. Good to see.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's unfortunately been there for a while. So it'll stay up there for a while.
I'm an optimist, and I think that certainly within my lifetime, things are going to change dramatically. And I think when the change happens in the Middle East, it's going to happen incredibly rapidly. Israel will unravel really quickly, and we'll be in a new world, and that will be a wonderful, wonderful thing to see.
was just thinking of the idea about there needs to be more protest to help the police get up to speed. I mean, with this government, whether it's a treaty principles bill or, changes in the equal pay, they're certainly doing their darndest to give these police more practice at protest, aren't they?
Yep. Well, they certainly are. Well, New Zealanders we're not good at protesting, to be frank. A lot of us are, a lot of the country's out of practice, but in a democracy, this is the lifeblood of democracy. We shouldn't accept the fact that, so we have an election. People say, oh, well, we've elected this government. This government has got a right to make all these rules because we gave them that right. But in fact, we didn't give them that right. What happened with this government is that there were issues that came up that in these coalition agreements that were never discussed during the election campaign. This is not democracy. This is dirty little deals done behind closed doors. Winston Peters comes with this little shopping list from all of his corporate donors, saying, oh, we want this, we want that, we want that. And he puts them all together into a little package. He might grumble about them in one or two of his speeches, a little line here or there, but no one's got any idea what his negotiating agenda is. And I think the same with the ACT Party, when they brought in charter schools or whatever. Democracy means we all participate, and democracy means that we all that when governments do things that they've got no mandate to do, we protest.
We started this conversation, John, with sort of a bit of a general chat about what's going on in the world and you and a bit about what you've done and where you've been. Just to wrap up with, I was thinking as you were speaking, because you have been at the forefront, a known face in a lot of actions in New Zealand over the last decades. I'm not asking you to pick your favourite protest. That would be a weird way to say it. But are there anything, if you're writing your memoirs, like what were the things that would feature in it about your life and what you've done?
Oh yeah, I won't be. I'm not a sort of a memoir biography person. I think whatever difference you make is going to will be in the minds of the people or the experiences of the people who you leave behind when you cark it, and that's the important thing. It's not it's not whether you write a book about it or whatever. So, but I think I still get really surprised by the when I come across a lot of people. This is people overseas when they talk about the Springbok tour in 1981. We saw it as our, that we were part of an international movement. There were boycotts going all over the world. Our big boycott was on rugby, and we had, for a whole lot of reasons, the protests in New Zealand developed very quickly and very large, and ended up becoming mass civil disobedience by the public of New Zealand, which New Zealanders don't often do that, but we did it in 1981, and we did it, and we led on other issues too during that period. But people in South Africa and observers of apartheid in South Africa have often talked about how much of an impact it had just on shaking up white South Africans into realizing that this couldn't go on. So I think in terms of the impact that and I mean it wasn't me, but the fact that I was a spokesperson for that movement during 1981, that gives people say, oh well, you did it, but I didn't. It was a movement that did it. I just happened to be the spokesperson for it. So I'm really proud of New Zealanders standing up in 81 and plenty of other times since.
There's a story I've heard about Nelson Mandela getting word of the Waikato rugby game being called off, and he tells a story, I believe, about that giving him strength after he heard what had happened in New Zealand on that specific event within the
he was,
Yeah,
he was there in a cell on Robben Island, and he told this story I wasn't there when he told it, but he was at the Governor General's residence at a garden party, and he was talking about it. And he said, he was in his cell there, and the wardens had got up in the middle of the night to watch this game. This was the very first game ever live streamed first rugby game ever live streamed in South Africa. Wow. So white South Africans got up out of bed in the middle of the night to watch it, and the guards at Robben Island were. And he said very quickly, they learned from the guards that the game wasn't going ahead. There were all these people on the field, and he said that when they realised that, and then the game was called off, he said they just couldn't believe it. He said they grabbed the doors on their cells and they rattled them right around the prison. He said it was like the sun came out. So it was, it was quite an inspirational moment for the struggle there. And of course, we never heard that till 12 years later, because the internet wasn't a thing in those days. But I feel very proud of the fact that we were, that Kiwis did stand up and were counted. Yeah.
It's important now, though, to realise that we're too small to make any sort of change, so it's best just not to rock the boat anymore.
Well, Chewy, we're the one country in the world that has the chance to speak out. I mean, we're in the Five Eyes Alliance. We are at the heart of the Western Empire, and if we speak out, it resonates. It will resonate right through the world, right through the global South, and through the Western world, and we would be able to look back on it with huge pride with our children and grandchildren. At the moment, we can just look back with bloody shame.
There's actually, I've got two more questions, John. I've got one just prompted from the 81 Springbok tour, but there's one from Mark in the chat, Chewy, that you'll start, which I think is a great question as well. If you're okay for a couple more minutes.
It's a great question.
We'll do that one first. John, your first protest. What was your first protest? Do you remember it?
The very first one. No, I don't.
Been so many.
Oh well, yeah, I don't actually remember the first one, but I think I got involved. It was when I was in Napier. Like I was, no, I don't know. I went to various, I guess, protest meetings when I was at university in the early 1970s, but I wasn't an active. I didn't have a loud hailer. My first loud hailer protest would have been probably in Napier, protesting against Rothmans, not because of they made cigarettes, but because they were owned partly by a South African firm. So, we were trying to cut New Zealand's links with South Africa.
Yeah. Nice. My last question, John, just prompted from the Springbok tour protest says, is there anything that we, the public, don't know or generally have gotten wrong from that 81 Springbok tour that you could share with us tonight? Like, is there a common misconception about that era or that protest?
Wow, that's a fascinating question. Yeah. That I think the biggest impact of that, of those protests was actually here in New Zealand itself. So because we had Māori activists who really, big part of the protests, and they were always challenging, Pākehā like myself and the movement generally, and saying, look, it's all very well to be protesting about racism 6,000 miles away, but what are you doing about racism in your own country? So I think that was the impact of that was actually enormous. So, within a few years of the 81 tour, we had the Waitangi Tribunal had been established earlier, but it was given the power to look at historical breaches of the treaty, and we're still in that process now. And I think it's been a huge learning curve for Pākehā New Zealanders, and I think it's been a hugely positive thing. And I was just absolutely overwhelmed by the numbers in that hikoi last year of Pākehā out there in their tens of thousands coming out and saying, no, keep your hands off the treaty. It was really quite inspiring, I think.
Yeah. Hey, John, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much for asking me. I appreciate it.
And we'd love to have you back anytime. Anytime you get to the IPCA telling you that you haven't done anything wrong again, you should definitely come back.
Okay, we'll do so. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, John. All the best.
Cheers, John.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Lovely. Let's get some of these super chats. Unless you've got anything you want to reflect on. I was just going to say, I didn't say it then. To be honest, I had about another 7 questions I could have gone to. That was fascinating. I was too young to really remember the Springbok tour. I was just a little. But you know how sometimes you don't know if you've got a memory or you can remember the story being told 10 years ago about the thing, but you don't know whether it's your memory or one from, I can't remember, but I have this memory, whether it's my memory or hearing the story about it 5 years later, of going to Eden Park and seeing the barbed wire around the field.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think it was the weekend before for the Auckland game, because my dad took us, like from when I was basically old enough to walk, I was going to watch rugby. So I took us to the Auckland game, and I think it was the weekend before the test match. Didn't go to the test match because I was tiny. But yeah, as I said, I don't know whether that's an actual memory or whether I just heard my dad talking about it in 1995 or whatever, and I've kind of put it in there. But yeah, there you go.
I mean, I was born in 1980, so I obviously have no recollection.
Well, come on, you've been getting around for a year. You must have something, surely something. Don't remember the flower bombs?
Yeah.
No?
Like, so my first, I guess, memories of being aware or being told about the Springbok tours probably happened in my pre-teens, maybe.
Yeah.
And just absolutely being blown away by a couple of things that people cared so much about something that was happening so far away, and learning at that time what apartheid was, and just my instant reaction is essentially a child going, "That's fucking not fair," and being really. One of the things that ADD kids have is a really inflamed sense of right and wrong.
Oh, really?
And I remember that being a real lightning rod of just going straight through my brain of like, well, none of that's right, none of that's fair. And so to see people here going, well, we're going to hit them where it hurts in the rugbies. I thought was incredible, and I remember for the first time seeing footage of what you were talking about.
Yeah,
actually, it would have been around the 10th anniversary of it, so that's when I would have seen it, like a retrospective sort of thing of someone actually flower bombing the game. And
I think that was Eden Park. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly for that. And just. You know, the 80s for New Zealand protests, like you had the anti-nuke protest, you had people going to Maramar in the early 90s and that sort of stuff. I guess that was the first start for me of like, oh, okay, so if someone's not listening to you, you don't have to put up with it.
Yeah.
Like if the government doesn't seem phased on something, or they go against, like if you get enough people together, you stand up for what you believe in and you can push further. And I think as a preteen or a young teenager going, oh, I'm going to remember this. This may become important later on.
It's funny you mentioned 10 years later, because that's what it feels like when my dad was talking about it. Maybe there was like a 10-year cooling off period. Maybe like people who did, they talked about it was the issue that split the country into, you know, in families, there was fights over the dining room table. I don't have any recollection of that at all, but maybe it was 10 years later, because that's what I'm saying to you. Like I can remember, you know, being in my early teens and having my dad maybe talking about it. And so whether that memory is there. I'll tell you what though, it's funny, you would talk about apartheid. Well, this would be an interesting conversation one night for people who are of the age, or maybe they don't have to be, because as you say, you can learn about it. But my big recollection of understanding about apartheid, it's a very clear memory. You know, sometimes you've got very clear memories. Like when Aramwana happened, I have a very clear memory of turning the news on and seeing Judy Bailey with big red eyes, because they'd been watching the feed and she'd been crying. So that was my memory of Aramwana, as Judy Bailey's stained eyes on the news. But my one for apartheid was I can remember and I can remember the picture of the girl, and I can remember the accent, and I'm going to do the accent even if and I'm going to say something really offensive, right? But this is why probably it stuck in my mind. It was just after apartheid had been, or was in the throes of just being turned over. and it was on the Paul Holmes show, which used to be on at 7 p.m. on TV1, where Hilary Barry's show is now with Newsboy. And they were in South Africa, and they had a camera on this, I'm going to call her a teenage girl, but maybe she was 25. And they asked her the question, how would you feel, like next week, when this gets overturned, about having black people at the pool? And she went like this. And I'm apologizing because it's horrible. She went, no, they're just so dirty. And that was her response to having black people in the pool the following weekend. And that's my, like, if you ask me what's my one thing about apartheid South Africa, it's actually that's the thing that's strongest of all. I was too young. When Māori All Blacks went there one year, they gave them honorary white titles. Oh yeah, they were honorary whites. None of that. That's all well before my time. So that probably would have been early to mid 90s, maybe that happened. So that's for me as well.
You've triggered another member berry there.
Okay.
As I remember being in history class and apartheid being discussed, and our history teacher had spent some time in South Africa,
right?
And he was talking about a big project that the apartheid government at the time was wanting to do. They were wanting to build some big power plants, and they needed some engineers, and of course they were under all of these sanctions, and a lot of countries weren't going to help them with that and that sort of thing. But one of the countries that was going to help was, I believe, India. Yep, we've got some engineers. We'll be happy to help. So that put the apartheid government in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah,
because they really needed the expertise. But it was very clear that these people weren't white.
Yeah, didn't want them out.
So where does it fit in our structure of rights based on color? And that's where they came up with the idea, the absolute big brain idea that all racists have from time to time, that they're honorary whites.
Yeah.
And I remember my history teacher explaining this and going, if that's the hoop you have to jump through, then surely that shows that this regime that you've built, the structure that you've built, is just built on lies. Like, if that's what you have to do. So yeah, I mean, I maybe that's why I look at Israel essentially doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I go, like, this hasn't even been a question for me about who's the good guy and who's the worst guy in this. And why I find it so laughable when people go, oh, well, if you're against Israel, you're anti-Semitic or you don't like Jews. No, absolutely not. A big part of my life is looking at history and World War II history. I couldn't get there, even if I tried, to go, oh, well, this is a Jewish thing. It's not. It's an Israeli thing. It's a Zionist thing. Those two things, not every Jew is a Zionist. Not every Jew is an Israeli. So that's really clear to me. So why I find people get hung up on that and can't break those things apart. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. I don't understand why people don't get it.
Yeah. I'll tell you one other thing that you've prompted, from me prompting, from you prompting, from John prompting. When I worked in Talkback, I was kind of doing fill-in work in the early part of the 2000s. I finished working for ZB about 2011, 2012, something like that. And I asked this question numerous times for a Talkback caller, and I don't think I ever got a call about it. And I think now back on it, and I kind of go, So I think 2005. So that's, say, 12, 13, 14 years after apartheid. And if you don't know this, Auckland is full of South Africans, especially the North Shore of Auckland. Huge population of South Africans. And every now and again, I'd try and do this topic. I'd go, if you grew up under apartheid South Africa, I really want to know what that transition was like for you. So you imagine, say, being born in 1962. So you're 30 at the end of apartheid. And then when I'm asking that question, you're 45. And I'm not saying I wasn't going, oh, that must have been so hard. I'm like, what if you've spent your life being told this one thing, and then you get told that's wrong and it's the opposite? How did that go? Like, imagine if you were 60 in 1992. So when this talkback caller is asking you, you're 75 or 73, it's like 80% of your life you've grown up under apartheid South Africa. And I probably did it, I don't know, 10 times, never once had a call. Never once. And I look back on that now and I kind of go, yeah, maybe that's quite a hard thing to reflect on, and maybe that's why I never once heard from someone to explain what it was like all of a sudden to be that girl and be in the pool the following week with black people, you know? Anyway. Happy Christmas, everybody. Is it Christmas? Not Christmas. Let's get some of these super chats. I did look through them for direct questions. I think I asked the only ones that were direct questions. Thank you for them. Kai Matara says, a reminder that we wouldn't have the Springbok Tour protest if Ngā Tamatoa hadn't been inspired by Palestinian militants after meeting them in Cuba.
Oh, I'm going to have to look into that. That's something I'm not.
Screenshot, take a photo. Take a photo, screenshot. Yep. Remind yourself.
What do I have to do? Blink twice.
Got it. This is from Tiffany. Believing non-violence stops violence is naive. Until systems are dismantled and power is challenged, colonial capitalism stands. Applies everywhere. I nearly saw that saying apples everywhere, and I thought you were talking about capitalism. Apple computers and phones, as far as it applies everywhere. I wasn't demeaning the point, Tiffany. I'm just being honest about my dyslexia for a second there. Another one from Kaimatara. Dear Māori who think Israel are safer than Palestinians, watch Paitangi in Palestine. Paitangi was surveilled by IDF and made to cover her muku koa, I believe. Pronunciation there. Another one from Tiffany. Well, I've got you. Thanks for your super chats, guys. The difference between a terrorist and a rebel is simply perspective, and the perspective of capitalists is that any challenge to them is terror. End of. Yeah, it was interesting hearing Amy last night. If you've missed the interview with Amy, you should go and watch it, about equity. We're going to be talking about equity next as well, and quality, and her basically saying, well, of course capitalists want to make their money off the backs of poorly paid women. Like, yeah, it's kind of all comes together, doesn't it?
Talking about the whole one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist sort of thing. Everybody knows that I'm a Star Wars fan. It's obvious.
Are you?
Andor, second season of Andor is going on at the moment, and it's some of the most phenomenal Star Wars content I've ever seen. But more specifically,
Star Wars, that's where Deadpool's from, eh? Is that Star Wars? Deadpool?
This is payback for all the mocking I've done of the sports. I know how this
It's not
works.
Deadpool. Wolverine. Is it Wolverine?
Shut up, Pat.
Or that guy with the Spock. Is that Star Wars Spock with this pointy ears?
I can just remove you. I'm trying to find my chain of thought now. Look, Andor is spectacular, and one of the things I'm really, really enjoying about it is it's a more grounded view of Star Wars and how a rebellion forms.
Right.
How you went from literally a couple of people to a rebellion, and what's involved, and the reaction from an oppressive state, and that sort of thing. It is so timely. It is so finger on right now. It is perfect sci-fi. And I would say, even if you aren't a huge Star Wars fan, and so maybe it has passed you by, go and watch Andor season 1 and 2. And just look at it as a story that is covering the rise of a rebellion and a resistance. It is literally perfect.
All right. Back to the chat. Rewa says, I could listen to John all night. Very informative. Yeah, I know. In the middle of that conversation, I was going, we could just do another Gary Pinder here and have this for the night and then shut down. Very easy. And Maramar Davison was kidnapped by IDF a while ago. Really? I don't know that story. I'd have to get around to talk about it. Tiffany is, you guys are going hard in the paint tonight. Time to rise up, folks, or it's too little, too late. The danger of mouse. But Israel are friendly. Sarcastic, but Israel are friendly. Our friend.
No friend to this country.
And Kiwi says the police want us to protest more. More? Okay. I don't think there's a problem, as I said to John, with this government. I think the protesting is taken care of. Now,
I'm definitely going to, next time I'm manhandled by a cop, I'm definitely going to whisper that in their ear.
What?
Like, no, I'm helping. I'm helping with your training.
You mean
I'm
like
sure
next time a minister tries to drive past you and you throw your body at them holding a sign somewhere in Dunedin, then?
I mean, that sounds like it's almost ripped out of the headlines, Pat. Whatever could you be referring to? There we go. Green Party Maramar, Davidson heading home after release from an Israeli detention centre. This slipped by me.
Yeah.
I was not aware of this. One of 13 women activists who were arrested and held by Israeli authorities after trying to breach Israel's blockade of Gaza on a protest ship.
That does ring a bell now, the protest ship, but okay.
Well, compared to what the Israelis are doing now, which is drone attacking them just off the coast of Malta, I'd say that Maramar was lucky in that case.
Speaking of...
This is... When was this? 2016.
2018, is it? 2016.
2016. And we're still talking about a blockade of Gaza. But hang on, didn't it all start on October 7th?
Well, did you notice that John very clearly said this has been going on for 77 years? You can know where he puts his numbers at. I was going to say something to you, but it jumped out of my head. Dun, dun. To do with the Maramar one. I can't remember. Oh, it's coming back. It's almost there. Do you know when it's like almost there and then it's not quite? It's like
almost.
Barely
there.
Come on, chat. Maramar. Oh, yes, I got it back. Talking about detention centres. I noticed that old mate Hassan Piker has put out a video today about being interrogated by ICE coming back into America where he was born and is obviously a citizen at Chicago Airport. I got there, the brain fired off. He got through and all that, but he tells the story on one of his YouTube channels today, if you want to check it out, about being pulled into the back room and realizing that it's probably targeted because everyone else in the back room, none of them were American citizens. He's an American citizen with an American passport who was born in America. And they were asking him things like, do you ever show support for Houthis? You know, do you have any connections to Hamas? And the reality is, if he goes, Houthis are the shit and I'm all about Hamas, in theory, he's American. There's nothing you can do, but we're living in an age now where there are things they are doing. This is the difference. And he said very clearly that he pushed the boundaries on purpose a bit, but he did not want to be locked up. So he also he watched his P's and Q's, but didn't quite do the I'll let my lawyer speak, which he probably should have. Anyway, okay. Should we keep going?
Sorry. Very quick. One very, very quick thing.
Come on.
Travel advisory for the United States for New Zealand travellers has been updated. Exercise increased caution.
Wow.
So they've finally started listening to people. Right, that's it. Moving on.
We're going to have a look at story on One News tonight. It is about the latest fallout about the pay equity changes. The government is saying carte blanche, Labor is lying, because what Labor is saying is, you know, this government has basically given pay cuts to women. So, and just put this out there to start with. The reason that's accurate is not because money has been removed from their bank today. It's that there are hundreds of thousands of women who are in the stages of going through pay equity cases who next week would have had more money, who now are not going to. This is why I said last night, this government has just made it harder for hundreds of thousands of families to have a better Christmas financially. Because we're not saying it's going to make a difference from last week's paycheck to next week's paycheck, but as these cases are heard and those 33 actions were resolved, then they would have had parity or equity and be paid more money. And some of them may well have got back pay as well. So the government's doing this mealy mouth thing where they're going, no one's had a pay cut, which might have a technicality which is true to it. However, I guess you could even go along with inflation. No increase with inflation is akin to a pay cut, but the pay increases they were in the process of getting have been cancelled. I'm also going to show you something very interesting. There is a group called Straight Families First, or they call Conservative Families First, or budget. Certainly not gay families. I think the name of the group is Straight Families First, and they have a show on the internet. I think you'll see where their inspirations come from. And they had on this week, I think most people, there'll be many words for the people they had on. Christo-fascists, alt-right, far-right, conservative, alt-right, fascist conservatives. And the thing about this equality for women, equity thing, that is most interesting is how this government's ballsed it up. And I'm going to show you how these people with these voices who are so anti-Labour, anti-woke, anti-green, anti-everything are all with one voice saying this government's really dropped the ball. We'll do that after this story. Here we go.
Claims of lying and gaslighting flew thick and fast today as the scrap over pay equity for women continued to dominate political debate. The hot topic overshadowed pre-budget speeches from both National and Labour, just over a week out from Budget Day, with the pay equity changes set to save the government billions. Political editor Mikey Sherman has developments.
It was a battle of the pre-budget speeches today, and with the countdown on,
just 9 sleeps to go.
the gloves are off.
I think we are at a moment that requires...
She's talking about like it's Christmas to your kids. It's not going to be Christmas. It's going to be Christmas if at Christmas time Santa comes down the chimney and takes your presents and runs away with them. That's the kind of Christmas it's going to be.
Just combine the two sayings. It's just 9 more sleeps to no lolly scramble, kids.
No lolly scrambles.
some honesty.
The truth, he says, is women taking a pay cut through pay equity changes.
Yep.
We won't take it anymore.
If you're taking away money that
Yes.
women otherwise would have got in
Yes.
their pay, I think most people would regard that as a pay cut.
To tell an outright lie to New Zealand workers that women's pay is being cut. That is a lie.
National digging in its heels.
They are outright lies. That's what they're doing.
That is untrue. That is a lie.
I think over the last week...
Wondering why they're not saying that in the House. It's funny, eh? They'll say it on tiles, but not in the House. Wonder why.
We've seen the biggest example of a New Zealand government gaslighting half the population.
How are you not cutting pay when you're saving billions of dollars?
Because we've got a pay equity regime that's focused on eliminating sex-based discrimination.
Not an answer, not an answer, not an answer. Could you please explain to us how this is, how you're getting billions of dollars off the backs of women, yet this is not taking money from women? That's the question. Tell us where that billions of dollars is that was going to be given to these women, that's now not going to be given to these women. So how is that not removing money from these women? Word salad, word salad, word salad, word salad. Look at my shiny head.
I can see how they've workshopped this.
Yep.
Like
outright lie.
We're not. Well, it's not a pay cut because we haven't quite given the pay rise to them yet.
That's right.
So we've just taken it away, which is not a pay cut.
Yep.
It's such a bush lawyer thing to do.
Yep.
And they've been doing this all the way through.
Yep, 100%.
Because we've got a pay equity regime that's focused on eliminating sex-based discrimination. It got completely out of whack under Labor, way too broad, way too loose.
Chris, let me just interpret for you. It got completely out of whack under Labor. What the Prime Minister is saying here is we need more money for our budget. We need it today. We can't look at the 2026 budget and take it from there because we're already overcommitted. So what I would say to you is we are going to take that money set aside for these pay equity cases, and we're then going to say to these women, we're taking it off, go and try again. In case anyone needed a bit of an interpretation there of what he was actually saying.
As Hipkins perhaps played into that narrative today, saying the country needs a mature conversation on debt.
If you look at the huge amount of infrastructure that the current government want to see New Zealand invest in, there's no way they're going to be able to do that out of day-to-day consumption. It's going to have to involve long-term financing.
Now, help me, Chewy, because I thought we were saying, and we said with Craig Rennie last week, 1.6%, that we actually should be borrowing for infrastructure. It's the wise thing to do. But unless I'm hearing this wrong, happy to hear it in the chat, it sounds like what Chippy's saying is, well, they're going to have to borrow for the infrastructure. And I'm like, but unless the criticism is they are saying they're not going to borrow and they're going to have to borrow, because all this way through we've been saying, well, borrowing for infrastructure in economic downturn is a good thing. Can you help me, Chewy, at all?
That's kind of what I thought Chippy's saying here, is that we need to have an honest discussion about what's good to borrow for and what isn't. And I think he's criticising the government here for saying that, they've heavily criticised Labor for borrowing. And then we're sliding into austerity and still borrowing.
Yeah.
So they're talking out both sides of their mouth rather than just being honest with us.
Right. So Steph says this is one of the interpretations. Steph says he's saying that Labor would borrow for infrastructure, which is what we've been saying all the way through.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that he's also saying the only way this will be accomplished is to borrow. So he might also be saying National's telling you they're not going to borrow, but they're gonna. So it's kind of a double, maybe a double snatch. He's like saying you should borrow, but they're pretending they're not going to, and they are. Are we now all agree? We know explaining is losing. Are we losing, or are we just explaining?
I think that that's it. I mean, you can't sit there and cut your income. So they did that by that massive tax rort for landlords, right? You've cut your income. You've got more people unemployed than any time since the global financial crisis. So your tax take is down there as well. So you got less money coming in. You can't cut your way to an infrastructure spend up. So you're definitely borrowing as well. So we're getting the worst of both worlds.
All right. It looks like everyone's in agreement here that Chippy's saying you need to borrow. These guys are pretending they're not going to borrow, but they are. By the way, we would borrow. That sounds like, okay, so we're in agreement. Okay, let's go.
Structure that the current government want to see New Zealand invest in, there's no way they're going to be able to do that out of day-to-day consumption. It's going to have to involve long-term financing, i.e. debt.
Labor have pinned their colours to the mast and have made clear that is the approach they would take in this year's budget. I think that's irresponsible.
The Finance Minister calling it déjà vu.
New Zealanders saw what happened in the past few years when that approach was taken. This is not the time to double down on it. And just as our economic recovery has gotten underway...
Oh, this is quite nice to hear, Joey. Do you know what? It's no longer... it's no longer blame Labor. Do you know what it is now? Blame the rest of the world. That's what it is now. Literally, that's what it is now.
Down on it. And just as our economic recovery has gotten underway, global events have conspired to make things harder.
Blame Trump.
That's just reality. We can't wish it away.
Yeah, but listen. That is reality. I actually agree with you, Nicola. So what you do is you keep a little aside and you put it under the bed for a rainy day. You don't pull it out from under the bed and give it back to landlords in the top 1% in tax cuts. So she's actually right. You can't control that, but what you can do is have an amount set aside for when that happens. And that's what they haven't done. So they've got their hand caught in the cookie jar and they're a bit screwed.
This is why she is such an unserious person as a finance minister. Because, again, absolutely correct, has identified the problem 100%. But when Labor are in charge, we ignore global situation. We ignore all of the international trade that it affects us as a heavy import-export country, isolated from everywhere else. We ignored that. It's completely Jacinda's mismanagement of everything. And Robertson's bad at being finance minister. Now they're at the wheel. Oh, well, you know, we're just one tiny cog in the global economy. We're just being tossed around by the waves of economic uncertainty. And this is just realistic.
We'll keep going.
They are choosing austerity. Nicola Willis doesn't like that word, but it's absolutely true.
The government recently announced a $1 billion cut to the operating allowance in this year's budget, reducing the amount of new money it'll spend.
Is this an austerity budget?
No, this is not. This is a budget in which we will be spending more next year and the year after and the year after.
Please, we have to. I shouted at the screen when I saw this on One News tonight. That's the biggest look away, because of course they're spending more because they spend more every year. This is not like we're doing so good for the economy because we're spending more. If you've got 1 million people living in a country, you have to spend a certain amount. If the following year you've got 1.2 million in the country, it's going to cost more. So every year, every government spends more. So this is not the out you think it is, Nicola. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Next year and the year after and the year after.
So not austerity nor a lolly scramble budget, but certainly a scrappy one.
Mikey there. So there you go, Chewy. Budgets were, what they didn't talk too much about this was what the national government have announced today. There was $100 million, I think, for maths in schools. Happy with that, of course. More money for education, for whatever.
Straight to Nicola.
Yep. And also $100 million given to a fund today who is going to, there was some interesting terminology. I should find the exact story. I don't know if I've got it. Talking about they are going to give to a fund, and that fund is about, here we go. It's the state-backed Elevate Venture Capital Fund is to get a $100 million injection in the next week's budget as part of the government's measure to boost high-growth technology companies with strong export potential. A couple of buzzwords in here which make me concerned. Finance Minister Nicola Willis announced the allocation in a pre-budget speech focused on government measures to lift economic growth through lifting productivity, like rail on, rail off ferries, you know, those kinds of productivity. No. Now this is the part. Lifting productivity, exports, this one here, and encouraging direct foreign investment. So they put $100 million in a fund to do, amongst other things, encourage foreign money to come here.
So the government's building up a fund for gambling. That's great. Look, there's a lot that I'm nervous about after reading what she's said this afternoon. Did you catch the bit about them potentially taking money out of the super fund?
No.
And just basically raiding that piggy bank? A little bit. Like some years we might take some out. Some years we might put some in. You know, we're all loosey-goosey. We realise that it's going to affect everybody's super, but frankly, we don't care because we're all sorted. That terrifies me. Of course, historically, you look at National love raiding our super fund. When Rob Muldoon did it, he cost this country trillions.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm real nervous to see, you know, it seems pretty likely that the government's going to drop its contribution to everybody's super fund. It looks like they're going to raid it for their own needs. All of that is very, very concerning to me.
Some chats that have been coming in. We'll get to some of those, and then we'll move on to the last thing for the night. Remember when Mossad was stealing dead Kiwi babies' identities? Yep, remember that. Literally going around graveyards, weren't they? From memory, literally going and finding graves. Yeah.
Yep, dead children, and the result for that was Helen Clark booted the entire ambassadorial staff out of the country. Maybe there's a lesson there somewhere.
Ian Fraser says, how's others' electricity bills? My line charges have changed from 69 cents a day to $1.38. Really? Bloody annoying. So that means over a 28-day thing, you've gone from paying $20 to paying 28 and a third again is another 40-ish bucks gone from it. So it's doubled. Yeah, that is doubled. It's exactly doubled. So, yeah, I'll have a look when my next bill comes in. Arvid says, if their social labour are lying, sue. Sue Fafo. I don't know who she is. She sounds like she might be a lovely person, though, Sue Fafo. Arvid also says, 9 sleeps till snap election. Oh, that's the week after. Yeah, what date does old Rimmer take over? I think it's June, isn't it? Isn't that the date that Bomber's predicting we look for the snap election?
I don't know. I feel like it'll be one of those moments that you see in movies where people are like, something really bad's just happened. Hasn't affected me directly, but the birds have all taken flight.
The phone calls coming from within the house. Now, be aware. Rewise says, actually, Chippy in his stand-up speech was excellent. How Craig put it was exactly how Craig put it. Sorry, my brain, my lies, my eyes. Wooming, I think, for the super chat. Lying Luxon and Wobble Willis doubling down on Crook Van Velden's theft of women's pay equity. They signed off on the theft for shiny new military toys. We've also got Arvids again. Right wingers always add half truths to look credible. And Icy Monster, BHN, love you guys. Dunners needs more love. I agree. Always more love. Oh, speaking of Dunners love, did you hear about Jesse Mulligan, RNZ?
No.
So, interesting little story. Jesse Mulligan does this thing in the afternoons on RNZ where he phones up a information site live on air and tries to find out information about the town that he's phoned. So he phoned up the Dunedin iSite, the information site, and I think couldn't get through, or basically got told to go and look on the website to find out more about the information. And the ODT lost their minds, apparently, and they're like, what a terrible advert for Dunedin, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so what RNZ's done, which is pretty cool, is they're going to, I think it's next Monday. It is next Monday. And I know it's next Monday because I'm going on the show. They're coming down, and Jesse's going to do his show from Dunedin, from iSite in Dunedin, as a bit of a thing. Because he's like, well, they don't have to answer my call. I know it's nothing special, but so that's their little play on it. And so, yeah, anyway, I know Jesse a little bit because we used to work, not together, but at More FM at the same time. And I messaged him and I said, when you get to Dunedin, remember a few things. You can't charge your phone in your car as you're driving home from work. Steak and cheese pies are a bit harder to find down here. And also there's not an owner-operator bakery in every suburb of Dunedin. And then I said, make sure you go to Wolf and make sure you go to Reburger. And his producer messaged me back and they went, no, we normally do a TV review thing on a Monday after 2. We were thinking about getting someone local. Do you want to come on? I went, no. Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, I'll be on RNZ next Monday afternoon talking to Jesse.
You're going to have to take them a cheese roll, Pat.
Well, I'm just saying that was because Icy said Dunedin needs more love. I'm just showing you Dunedin's getting more love. RNZ's going to come broadcast out of here.
Well, I'm just saying that the love will flow if you tell them about the cheese rolls.
Yeah, not so keen on the cheese rolls. Iffy. Tiffany says, first they came for Māori, I stayed silent, I am not Māori. Then for trans folk, I stayed silent, I am not trans. Then for women, silence, not a woman. Then for cis white men, and only then did I wake the, I guess it's F up, as it came for me. Yeah, there was no one left to fight for you. Okie dilly dokily neighbourinos. Let's go to this last story. Now, this last story is actually about the equity bill. It's a little bit like what's happening at the moment. Even if you are a supporter of the change in the bill, or even if you're someone who is minimising they haven't cancelled anything. It's the same argument, right, as the 3 white men who were pro the treaty principles. They're not changing a single word in the treaty. Show me the word they're changing. Yeah, but they're changing exactly how you interpret the words that are there. It's the same sort of argument. So there's this show on the interwebs. I think it's on a Monday night. I'm not 100% sure. Ironically, because predominantly Christian groups are very concerned about males showing empathy and being accused of being gay. They've called it straight talk because it's got to be straight talk.
Oh, so lame.
From Straight Families First. This is run by Bob McCoskey of Straight Families First. And I want to just play you this. I've only got about 4 clips. They're only like 30 seconds each, so don't run away, people. And I wanted to first show you a question that Bob asked, because it's very, very clear that Bob has a narrative that he wants his, whatever word you want to put in there, alt-right, right, conservative, Christo-fascist, Christian, whatever word you want to use. He wants them to suit his narrative. And I'll show you why, because this is a question he asked in the middle of a conversation from this lady here, who we're going to play her a bit of her comments later. But she'd basically said the government did the wrong thing. And this was the response from Bob McCoskrie from Straight Family First.
Okay. Are you saying, though, that if you get on a plane, that the pilot, whether they're male or female, should be getting paid the same as the air hostess, whether they're male or female? You're not
It's said no person anywhere ever.
saying that, are you?
So lame.
But you can see, right, that's his narrative, right? That's the narrative that he wants to put out there, that this is all a big storm in a teacup. And of course, you shouldn't compare a librarian to an engineer. Oh, yeah, that's ridiculous and da-da-da-da-da. So the first person we're going to hear from is a doctor, Ata Moala, I think she is, the Zionist in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm not using that as a pejorative, by the way, because she's obviously, that's what she claims to be from the looks of the flag behind her. So these are all these people who are in this conservative world. And all of them, even Peter Williams up the top, are like, the government has done this wrong. This is going to stick to the government. This is going to hurt the government. So what I'm trying to show you is, when you lose these guys, you really have lost the battle.
The women have always been paid less throughout the age. And, you know, in health, for example, our nurses have always been paid and have never been paid properly. And of course, that's why we lose so many of our very experienced nurses they leave the nursing workforce and they go elsewhere. Either they go to Australia or they go and find another career. And, you know, it's the same with midwives and, of course, our teachers. Terrible, you know, when we think that they've got the most important job in helping our kids.
You know, no disagreements, Chewy? No disagreements so far. And then comes to the point about, do we agree with the legislation?
You know, and a majority of our teachers are women. So, yes, the women have always not been paid properly. Definitely not support this move of government. But of course, you know, the question is whether people is going to desert the right, you know, the national.
So definitely doesn't support the legislation. Question is, will they desert national? This is Simon O'Connor, right? He is a former National Party MP. Again, his commentary about this legislation and what it's doing to the right now, how it's sticking.
All they know is that the government, it wasn't, not to be blunt, Bob, it wasn't 36 hours, it was in 12 hours, they rammed through a law to take money off the poorest, most vulnerable women in our society. This could be...
I see your look, Chewy. Do you see what I'm saying? If you've lost these guys, you've lost the war.
Be a make or break. We'll find out in 18 months.
Can I just clarify that?
So you hear Bob's, you can still hear in this question, he's trying to paint a narrative. This isn't going well for the narrative that Bob first wanted out of this thing. The stuttering, the stammering. If you don't know Bob, he runs a group called Straight Families First. Just remember that.
Can I just clarify that? What do you mean by taking money off women?
For a lot of people, they will see that there were...
When you ask that question, because you're wanting a different narrative to be paid, you have to be aware that you might not get back the narrative that you're looking for, a la Nicole McKee and the gun registry.
For a lot of people, they will see that there were claims, and there were 33 claims before the courts to increase the income for women who are cleaners, nurses, care assistants. That's just being ended. And so the general narrative is that the poorer paid people in society just lost out on money and cash. David Seymour gleefully said that, you know, he and the minister had saved the budget.
Yeah. I'll give you another one. This is even Peter Williams. This is only 16 seconds. Even Peter Williams agrees, and he is an official cooker now. We'll play one clip at the end to show you that.
Oh, yeah.
Even he goes, he's been lost on the way they've done it. He goes for a 6-minute tirade after this clip about women's pay. This is a ridiculous conversation, but still he's agreeing that this government has tarnished themselves with a bad brush.
Well, as an exercise in political communication, it was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. They could not have done it worse. They should not have pushed it through under urgency. They should have gone to a select committee to at least discuss the issue.
And this last guy up the top right, I'm not entirely sure who he is, Brendan someone. He runs like a pro-life, anti-choice group sort of thing. Only 15 seconds on him as well.
There's a whole lot going on here. First of all, there's the fact that the government just rammed this through under urgency. I don't think that's justified. It was a cynical move, and I have big concerns about that. If your case is sound, make your case. And they've only really hurt themselves ultimately, even if their case is sound here.
All of them. All of them.
Wow.
All of them on this kind of far right, conservative, Christo-fascist, Christian, whatever word fits in there for whichever one of those, Zionist, whichever one that fits in there. All of them say that this is a huge mistake by the government. They're not quite saying the idea is a mistake, but how they've done it is a mistake. And it just goes to show the idiocy of that show run by a guy called Bob, who runs a group called Straight Families First. Because none of them got to the point of why did they ram it through. And the only reason they rammed it through was they needed to plug holes for the upcoming budget, for giving money away to landlords and tax cuts. They never quite made it to that. But I'll still say, Chewy, when you lose all of them, this is a really bad look. If the left can keep this conversation going for the next 12 months, it won't be as big, but it'll be on that same kind of Venn diagram as the Republican Supreme Court taking away a woman's right to choose. They can keep it going because at the moment, all of them who are commenting are saying with one voice, the government did this dirty, which is a really interesting observation, Chewy.
Well, I feel conflicted. I don't think I'm ready to welcome these comrades with open arms, but I'm glad to see them here on this particular issue at this particular time.
Yeah, but in fairness, you didn't hear the other 5 minutes each of them spoke about, airline pilots versus janitors. You didn't hear that. So I'm not going so far as to them all saying that they agree with the idea of equal pay being an issue, but this perception, because it's a reality, the narrative that they're talking about, because it's the truth, of this government ripping money away from the most vulnerable women has stuck, is damaging, and with one voice, people are saying they're either saying this is bad, or they're saying this is a bad look, or they're saying this is a bad way it's been done. But the word bad is associated with everybody, Chewy.
It's almost like this government might be a bunch of shady assholes. People are
they're not very good at this? Is it because they're not very good at this?
They're not very good at this. But look, what I would say to you is this. Certainly in the last couple of weeks, there are several issues that we have talked about on BHN, either amongst you and IPAT or with some of our learned guests, where we said that where things were going weeks, months before it happened.
Yeah.
Like there's articles today saying that there's more operations going out to private healthcare providers, and that doctors and nurses were going to be doing extra hours to clear the backlog. In that story, it said exactly what Gary Pinder said, that the private guys were cherry picking their way through the easiest cases, and the rest would be done by the doctors and nurses that are having to fight for every penny of their paycheck.
Yeah.
All of this, I am terrified to see what we are right about and what Craig is right about in the upcoming budget.
Yes.
I think I'm sick of being right. What did I call myself one day? Oh, Nostradamus.
Nostradamus, that's a good t-shirt.
we shouldn't have the hit rate that we do.
Yeah.
Because we are two dumbasses at the bottom of the South Island with some opinions that need to come out, otherwise we explode. By rights, our hit rate should be worse than this, and there should be people clipping us and go, look what these dickheads said. They're so wrong.
We're
Hasn't
just a couple of the needed rodeo clowns. Yeehaw. Yeah. Yeah, the thing about that is,
just carry on with my life.
It's just so obvious. That's why. I mean, it's so obvious that if you empty your coffers, like we talked about the government emptying its coffers, landlords, tax cuts, big tobacco, et cetera, giving all the money away, going, if there's no issues, like if there's no cyclone or there's no world event, they might sneak through and it might look okay. Guess what? Trump fucked you. Fucked you hard. And because of him, your coffers being empty are actually impacting the rest of us. So I'm sorry, Nikki No Boats. You don't get to go there and go, world events, it happens, but we have to deal with it. Because the truth is, let's go back to Michael Cullen, shall we? Sir Michael Cullen typically ran surpluses. Almost accidentally ran surpluses, but had money there should there be something going wrong. Running it close to the bone or under, if you need an unknown cost that comes up, like an orangutan in the White House, then you're screwed. And guess what? You're screwed. Then you have to start stealing money from, as Simon O'Connor said, the most vulnerable women workers in the country. And if you want to challenge me on that, anyone, go see David Seymour first, who said, we saved the budget, meaning we just found the money to plug the gaps. Oh, that's interesting. When did you find the money? After we made changes to the Equal Pay Act. Oh, that's interesting. Who will that impact? The most vulnerable working women. Go on, challenge me. I dare you.
Before we go, Pat.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about Craig Rennie?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
We're not aware of anything happening with Craig Rennie. That's our position.
Nope. Our plan is on, I'll tell you what our plans are. Our plans are probably to do a live show at 2:00 on budget day. It's a Thursday. You'll be working, eh? We might try and get you off, bro. 2:00 budget day. Try and do a live show as soon as the lockup's out. Not sure exactly the details of how it's going to work yet, but at the moment we'd like to be able to do that, so we'll aim towards it. That's all. Nothing else to see here, folks.
No, there's nothing
all
else.
Right.
I know nothing.
There's a couple of star chats in there. I miss cheese rolls. Blasphemy, says IC Monster. Cherie sends us a super sticker. Thanks, Cherie. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe you can look on the YouTubes to see. Tiffany, Otago for 5 years. I still don't get cheese rolls. Have I had one? Yeah, I've had one. They're yum, but it's a cheese toasted sandwich in a circle. What's the difference? What's the difference between toasted sandwich and cheese?
I'm going to send you back north, Pat.
Who are these woke people talking about all those activists on Bob McCoskey? He runs a group called Straight Families First. And just in case you didn't know that. On his show, all those woke people. Tiffany says, must be a cold in hell. I agree with Peter for once. I did have one more clip. Shall I play you the last clip as a bit of a palate cleanser? Because if you were worried about agreeing with him, I have got the bit where he goes xenophobic and racist and beats up on beneficiaries. I could play that clip for you. It's only about 40 seconds if you want me to. Tell me in the chat if you want me to. Ryzen says, I can hear Bob McCoxkin internally crying. I see again, Governor's cheese rolls in the 90s were on positive note. On plus the note.
End on a positive note.
To end on a positive note. Well, maybe we'll play Peter Williams, then we certainly will not. Bob, short for Dick. That's very funny. That's very funny. Okay, I got to go to the chat now. Are they telling me to play the ridiculous one from Peter Williams or not?
No. Please do,
okay.
Platt. Please play.
Palate cleanse me.
Yes.
Okay. I don't like how that actually sounds, Tiffany. Palate cleanse me, Pat. I'm just not.
I think
I'm not
he's
sure.
I think he's just mistyped "clean me, daddy."
All right. So I thought what I'd do as well, just in case anyone was a bit confused about this group of people that did sound a bit woke, didn't they? That we better give you a little bit of Peter Williams just to wrap it up. He's coming straight from his unreality check radio segment. To make sure we know, though, that those bloody brown people did not come here from overseas, and all those people on a benefit should bloody get off it and go do the work that the brown people are working. So this is, I think this is technically, it's the opposite of a palate cleanser. It's actually getting your palate, pulling it out, smearing kind of shit on it, and then reinstalling it. That's what this is.
What you have to do is find the market price for one particular job. And if care workers are badly paid, I have one solution to stop that. Shut the immigration gates. Make sure that we don't have incoming people from the Philippines or from India or Sri Lanka.
Interesting. What countries did he mention? Because he didn't say England, or he didn't say Australia, or he didn't say South Africa. He picked those ones they've got much darker skins and much thicker accents. That's weird, eh? I wonder why it was only those three. You know? It's kind of weird.
This old twat setting fire to his career,
his legacy,
has more legacy. That's a better word. Has more holes in his brain than Swiss cheese. How old is this guy? I'm sure
403.
He's going to end up in a care home. Guess who's working in a care home, Peter?
And we're going to play this on loop.
Oh, look, it's a Filipino nurse.
Hang on, we've got to get to the end of this. So he's got to dump on migrants before he dumps on beneficiaries, and then we can say goodnight for the night.
Don't have incoming people from the Philippines or from India or Sri Lanka staff our rest homes. And then you might say, well, who's going to do the work? Well, last time I looked, there's about 200,000 unemployed people out there. They will not be getting any welfare payment unless they go to work. There would be lots of jobs suddenly appear for them.
There you go. I just wanted to make sure you didn't think that these people had seen sense on any level. It just goes to actually show, Chewy, how much more interesting it is that they are all in one voice saying the government's gotten the process of this wrong, and that's still who they are. So that just goes again to show how wrong they've actually got it.
Yeah. Oh, there's a good question. Why does he seem so familiar? Former newsreader.
He was on his screen. He was on our, not just newsreader, he was a sports guy. He was on our screens for 40 years. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very distinctive voice. He voiced ads, did radio stuff, did TV stuff. Been around forever. But yeah, just goes to show in the twilight of your life, you can go, I've built a rock solid legacy. You know, people have great name and voice recognition to me. I better do something about that. It's also called the Sean Plunkett effect, where you just pile dynamite underneath your previous career and just blow it the fuck up.
A couple of ones from Tiffany just to wrap up. Him and Paul Henry calling the nurses cheeky. I think cheeky was Paul Holmes. Cheeky Darky. That's I made a song with that. You know what I've been thinking of doing the last couple of weeks, Chewy? I've got a whole bunch of computers sitting underneath my chair, all like old ones, getting them all out and emptying all the hard drives. And maybe once in a while we'll bring some highlights along. I made a song with Ebony and Ivory with all the comments that Paul Holmes made about the cheeky darky. It's really good as well, actually. We should bring it along.
It's a different time. So long in the past.
Sadly, shit tongue is the norm. Feels like home. All right, guys. It's been a blast tonight. I'm so thankful for John Minto coming on. I'm always grateful when people say yes. They've got no reason to say yes to us at any stage ever. We never feel entitled to be able to speak to some. I know that there are some independent media groups out there who start crying on the air literally when, well, not literally crying, but literally bitching and moaning when the Prime Minister won't return their calls anymore. But I don't care who you are. I never feel entitled to your time. So when someone with the story of John Minto agrees to come on, then gives us that kind of not just a drop of knowledge, but just such an interesting story as well. I'm always incredibly grateful. And so thanks for John, who absolutely will not be watching now. And thanks to you guys for joining us. It's been a fun night. It's been a good one, actually. Hey, just get the sense, Chewy, that maybe tomorrow night we should do a really shit show, because everyone says, "Oh, another great one, another good one." We gotta. I mean, if we gotta take a dive at some stage. Maybe we should just plan tomorrow night to have a crap show. Should we plan a crap show tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're
right.
just going to do news commentary about Western Guinea.
Yeah.
We know nothing
Done.
about it, but I'm sure there's
Well,
stuff going on.
But that doesn't change us from talking about any other stuff we know nothing about. So maybe it'll be fun. I guess you'll have to come back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for our next edition of Big Hairy News. Sleep well, whānau. We will catch you then. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.
Is that acceptable, Chewy? Vegemite on your cheese roll, or is that sacrilege?
I actually prefer Vegemite.
On your cheese roll?
No, just in general.
Bloody Aucklander. You're a bloody Aucklander, mate. That's what you are. Bloody Aucklander.
It's Australia. I hate Australia.